It's me, Queen KB, back for another episode of the Royal Council. With me this week is Baron Botch, Noble Natalie, and Count Oscar. And that's it, just us today. Yay! Anyway, this week we're going to be discussing those tag teams that had the most epic of breakups. Because the tag teams, just sometimes when they break up, it's so beautiful. And I love that New Day isn't breaking up, even though they're a faction and not a team. Let's see. Oscar, why don't you start with the one that you were discussing?
Okay, so I have one that became very personal after their breakup, and it's weird that we see this guy wrestle nowadays, because you go back in time and you're like, oh, this is the guy that they were wrestling over once they broke up. It was Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. And who could forget that memorable breakup? Rey Mysterio is standing in that corner by himself, and Eddie Guerrero is walking up the ramp. And then from there, the rest is basically history. But it turned into a feud for Dominic, who wrestles now in WWE, which is crazy to say, but it was the custody of Dominic. That was the match that basically the climax of the breakup between Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, which is crazy to say, because I see Dominic wrestle and I'm like, maybe I've been watching wrestling for a little bit too long, because if he's grown up now and this is what we're getting, then maybe I don't want to say I'm old, because that would be disrespectful to my other teammates here.
Being the youngest one in years, right?
This is what we're not going to do.
But yeah,
That's the one that comes to my head. Growing up, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, I grew up with them. You know, I remember them tag teaming. Eddie was in the prime of his career at that point, and Rey Mysterio was barely coming, outside of that cruiserweight division that he was in for such a long time. They were out finally together. They were good friends. I believe they won the SmackDown Tag Team Champions at that moment, and out of nowhere, Eddie decides to go heel. And who can remember that crazy feud they had? I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but I'm
sure everybody remembers the On Your Poppy feud, if you were watching at that point.
Yep.
It was one of my favorites.
I heard of it.
You heard of it and you weren't watching then.
Right.
And it was really one of Eddie's last major feuds before he passed away. And I think that's why it sticks in most people's heads so much, the I'm Your Poppy storyline. But it's shocking to see that picture of Eddie and Angie and Ray and Dominic in the ring and people were so upset that they actually brought Dominic into the ring for this storyline. In reality, he was in there with the three safest people in his life. He was in there with his parents and his Uncle Eddie, because he was Uncle Eddie. And now we've got Dominic wrestling.
And killing it.
With that hood. Oh. I know how Botch hates that hood in his gear.
I'm so glad that hood went away. It was so dumb.
Yeah, they removed the hood and the sleeves from the outfit, and it looks fantastic.
Stupid.
Yes.
Yeah,
my gosh.
I love going back in time. I'm a very nostalgic fan when it comes down to wrestling.
Me too.
I will always go back in time, remember those moments, and like you said, that was one of Eddie's last big feuds and hurrahs before he tragically passed away. But to me, that's will always be one of those breakups that I would have loved to see Eddie and Ray still go at it right now, go in the ring and win and just wrestle again, even if it's not together, but across the ring from each other. To me, that's one of those storylines that would always be who I am as a fan of wrestling. It was so over the top. It was crazy. It was so dramatic, but it was great. It was great. It was great wrestling back then.
I completely agree. And it spawned so much. It really, it changed a lot. It was one of those storylines that could have gone the wrong way, and they handled it so beautifully.
Yep.
They did. It was post Attitude Era, but still amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if it would go good in today's wrestling, it probably wouldn't. But back then, that was what wrestling was all about.
Exactly.
No.
And the thing is, nowadays, they would not bring a child into the ring with that type of storyline. Not at
No
all.
way. But that was our wrestling back then, and
It was. And it was so good.
it was so good. Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
I know Natalie has one of the most infamous, and that's what spawned this idea in the first place. So go ahead, Natalie.
It was when Shawn Michaels turned on Marty Jannetty. Oh my God, that was bad. I still think of it till this day. And I will never forget Shawn verbally going off on Marty and then putting him in, I quote, his little go-go boots through that barbershop window. And the last I saw, literally ever saw, of Marty Jannetty was his butt hanging over the edge of that. But I never saw Marty ever again. Unless
not
I
many
look
people-
him up online.
I mean,
yeah,
he
he
did.
came back a couple times, but he
Yeah.
struggled in life.
Just
But I
as
never
a whole, he
actually saw
struggled. Yeah.
him in a, personally never saw him in a match. Till this
That's-
day, I've not watched a match with him in it.
That's
Since
why it had
then.
to end to begin with, yeah, because he was starting to struggle personally. I think that's why they
Exactly.
broke up.
And that was the start of HBK's
Who
everything.
knew too? Because so I remember seeing them in AWA. This is how
Yeah,
truly
me too.
old Queen and I are. We remember seeing them in AWA, and Marty Jannetty was the one with all the confidence and all the swag and all the. I mean, he was the one we were looking at, and Shawn Michaels was just kind of there.
He was just kind of this kid.
Yeah, he had a much lighter voice at that point. He didn't have anywhere near the presence he has now. Of course, in AWA, nobody had any presence except just a very few, like Baron von Raschke did, and there were a couple of others who did, but pretty much nobody else did really. But Marty had an edge to him back then.
Right. Even Mean Mark Callis didn't have much the couple matches he had there.
I thought was he in it? Was Mean Mark Callis in
I thought
AWA?
he was,
I
but
thought
it
he was.
might.
He was in NWA, I believe.
Oh, okay, I might be wrong, but I'm saying even in that I'm saying along those lines, there were a lot of wrestlers who didn't have edge.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, I mean,
And I'm talking right down to Mean Mark Callis, who has the most edge of any character till Bray Wyatt.
Like Scott Hall had nothing. Kurt Hennig had nothing. You would never expect that they would matter the way that they eventually mattered. But in AWA, nobody had that because they were trying to present themselves as serious athletic competition. Like they were major kayfabe long after kayfabe was already starting to fall. They just, for whatever reason, Vern Gagne just wouldn't let it go, and unfortunately, it ended his company.
Yes, it did.
But back then, it was like back to Marty. Like Marty was the one with all the charisma, and like he was the one we were paying attention to, and he spoke and you paid attention because he had such confidence and such presence.
Yes.
So for it all of a sudden to go, like Natalie was saying, for it all to go so horribly wrong in the barbershop, and then for Shawn to rise to ascendancy, like what? This is totally backwards. But then later, of course, we find out that Marty had unfortunately, a lot of personal problems that he's still working through even to this day. And that's what made that happen. And thankfully, Shawn was able to kind of rise from the ashes. And
not just rise from the ashes, but became one of the top wrestlers ever.
Yeah, true. And no one saw that at the beginning. You couldn't tell.
No, he was just this
one of
boy
the most
with a blonde
iconic
mullet.
wrestlers of my generation, I guess, growing up. But I grew up watching Lucha Libre, but I still remember, like, that's one of those moments that you would always remember forever. Marty Jannetty going through that glass.
Yep.
By Shawn Michaels it's iconic.
And the commentary sold it so well too. Like, I remember at the very beginning of it when they were both in the barbershop and they were just talking, because remember the storyline was that Marty just kind of wanted to talk out their issues,
Right.
And so they were there talking, and Bobby Heenan was on commentary going, "No, they'll never break up. It'll never happen." And then finally he kicks him and he goes through the glass, and Bobby was like, "I knew it. That snake. I knew." Like it was just perfectly sold. just perfectly done all the way around. The story was just so brilliantly told, and you hated Shawn Michaels' guts instantly.
Oh yeah.
It's just how could you? Like, I remember watching, I was on my couch like, how could he? Like, I was so into it. I was so sucked in.
I was like almost in tears.
Dude, yes, it was
I
amazing.
was so sad and upset. It was so horrible.
Like, why? Like,
It was such a shock.
yes,
And
it was.
yeah, and it's something that even how 20 some odd years later,
Oh gosh, 30.
30, yeah.
Probably
Oh,
closer
no,
to
no,
40.
no, not 30.
Yeah.
Eddie was more than 3 years old at that age. Close, but not quite. You're right.
Okay.
He was
Okay,
like
so
6.
okay. But I mean, I know it was more than 20 years ago because that was 2000.
It
That
was
was
more than 20 years.
ages
And
ago.
oh my God. I couldn't believe it.
Back then, a shocker like that, I mean, shockers like that didn't happen.
And there were no dirt sheets then, and it couldn't leak out.
Yeah,
Thankfully.
exactly.
So we could
But then
be shocked into it, and it was great.
That's when wrestling was great. It was the shock of the unthinkable was gonna happen. That's what got people.
That's
It
what
wasn't-
got people watching,
Yeah.
especially
Right.
after the cartoon era.
True. Because
But-
that got real. That was so incredibly real. And it was based in reality. They were not getting along as people at all.
Right.
So by that point, and I mean, obviously we found out later, the reason that they weren't getting along was because Marty was losing control, which is incredibly sad. But this was based in reality, and that's what made it so compelling. That's why we sat there and went, why? Like, that's why, because it was all based in reality.
And we didn't know any of the reality behind the scenes the way we do now.
No, we didn't.
So did they ever have, I know Marty was struggling in his personal life. Did they ever have like a storyline with where Marty went away, or he got, nowadays it's like, I win, you quit the company and you go away or something like that. They have that closure, or he just
No.
disappeared after that promo?
Just
They
pretty
just-
much faded away.
They
And
dropped
then
him.
Vince
Really?
brought him back a couple.
You're muted, Queen. Go ahead, you were saying?
Sorry, I got a phone call in that. We're going to have to edit right here.
It's
Look
okay,
at the
go.
time.
Go for it.
Vince tried to bring Marty back a couple times to help him financially, help him work through some of the things. At one point, Marty was actually living under a bridge.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
I don't know where in the country. He was living under a bridge, and Vince found out, and he basically found him a place to stay and put him back to work in the WWE. And he had a few matches here and there, and nothing ever came of it. And it got him on a better path for a bit, but not for long. Vince really tried to help Marty a number of times through the years, and I give Vince credit for that. Huge credit.
Because he could see what everybody else could see. Like Marty had and still has something. It just he couldn't stop self-destructing. And unfortunately, even now while we're sitting here doing this, it's still happening.
Yes, it is. He is in really rough shape.
I know. Yeah, it's such a shame. To
Until
be
he
that
wants to.
talented and to be that out of control. I mean, drugs are nothing to play with, and he is one of the major proof positives of that. Like,
I wish he would find himself and go talk to DDP, because DDP would help.
In a heartbeat.
Because DDP helped Jake, helped Scott Hall, has helped so many people. DDP
Yeah.
would step up and help Marty. Oh, and Jake Roberts. Forgot about Jake.
he would definitely try. He needs
He would.
something.
And if anyone could, DDP has with some of the those in the wrestling industry who've had the most issues. DDP has helped many of them.
Yep, true.
And if he can't help him, I don't think there's anyone that can.
You never know.
Yeah.
Unless Marty really has to want it.
That's
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the way addiction goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even wanting it for one moment, you have to want it forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's step out of a couple of decades ago and step into a couple of years ago with my pick for this. And that is a little, and I use the term little on purpose, a little team named DIY.
Oh.
Because my gosh, they were so good together. Ciampa and Gargano were the team. They were never like Marty and HBK. They were such a good team together. They were so good and they melded so well and they did so much in NXT together. And then Ciampa turned and it was all over.
It was beautiful.
Was it all over?
Well, it was all over. And that's actually kind of an interesting footnote to it, in that when they brought DIY back together briefly, it was Gargano who
Turning,
flipped.
you know.
I can't wait for the next epic return of theirs and see how they break up again.
When they pretend to get back together a third time, yeah. Or a second time.
And I would buy it. I would be right there buying all of it because I love these two as friends. They were so good as DIY.
But they were better as enemies.
Exactly.
So
which they're
much
right back to. And we got to see that this past week on NXT in the Fatal 4-Way match. I mean, the work in that match was stellar. All four men in the ring were stellar. But I am so Gargano and Ciampa obsessed. And that obsession for me comes from their breakup. That breakup was just so meaty and juicy.
It was emotional.
And as Botch would say, delicious.
It was very emotional. It was like we were so invested emotionally. We loved them as baby faces, and we were like, yes. And then out of nowhere, it was one of those things that you didn't expect. Going back to those breakups that you don't expect, it was one of those things that you never expected Ciampa to turn on Gargano. And when it happened, the whole world was shocked.
Exactly. It was one of those no one saw coming. And they kept it hidden from us.
They did a great job about it.
Which is fantastic in this day and age because, with dirt sheets and, we really try to avoid posting spoilers and stuff like that. But the information is out there. If we don't post it, every other website is posting it. So, we kind of play that hard balancing act. But we don't want to spoil anything for the viewers who don't want to be spoiled. Yeah. And that was one that was not spoiled for the fans from anything I was reading. So, and same happened when they got back together. No one knew if they were going to be back together again and look what Gargano's doing now as a heel. So much greatness.
It's crazy because you never expected Gargano to go heel.
Never.
Gargano was NXT's heart, soul, everything, and now nowhere he's heel now, and it works great. For both of them, it works great. Ciampa's heel is great. Gargano's heel is amazing. It just works.
And Gargano and his wife as heels together is working beautifully.
Candice needed it desperately. Desperately.
Yes, she did. Okay, Botch, you got to round us out with your pick for the most dramatic, epic tag team split.
I'm going to disappoint you.
Drum roll.
Oh, don't do it to yourself. I will disappoint you because
oh boy,
this will not measure up. I promise you. But there was one that shocked me anyway, just little old me. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. Okay. This was from, I think it was like 2008, 2009. You can correct me if I'm wrong on the time frame. But Crime Time had been together since forever. They were involved in all that stuff with John Cena for a minute. Like you couldn't, and in reality, they were together all the time. Like just in reality, away from wrestling, they were such good friends. They were brothers is really what they were. And everybody knew it. And so I told you this was going to let you down. And so when finally they broke up, and Shad was the one who turned.
See, I don't remember it.
I don't.
Oh yeah,
I know.
it
I'm trying to
wasn't.
go back in time, and I'm like, I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it didn't.
Shad turned on JT.
Shad turned completely on JTG during the match because they had a couple of matches where things had not gone according to plan, and JTG had kind of done the job, you know. And then finally one night, Shad was just kind of over it, and he turned on him. He said, "Now it's not crime time anymore. Now it's my time."
Ooh.
Ooh. Okay.
And so it should have. I guess one of the reasons that I mentioned that one is because they had set the stage for this to be a very big deal, and the two of them had enough character and enough charisma between them to have
Yes.
been able to pull it off. And I remember the blow off didn't occur too much longer after that. It was at a pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view escapes me, but it was a match that Shad had won decisively. There was kind of like a back and forth. I think JTG picked up one, and then Shad picked up the one that was decisive. And then after that, it was just kind of over. And I'm thinking, you could have made so much more of this because they both had enough character and enough charisma to pull it off. And then shortly after that, Shad was let go from the company, which basically led JTG to just spend forever and a day jobbing. We remember kind of looking at him going, we didn't even know he was still employed by the company. Like it got to that point where he was just doing jobs left and right. He changed. I remember his wardrobe completely changed into something that was more jobberific. But it's like, I was thinking of that breakup because I thought, again, like I said, like you have these two guys that were so great together, and this breakup should have been just epic. Like a lot like Damien Mizdow and The Miz. Like this should have been incredible because the two of them could have pulled off a much longer feud with more twists and turns to it. This could really have been interesting, and we kill it in 2 matches that don't even matter. Like it should have just been so much more. So I think that's why that one sticks out for me, just as for promise unfulfilled. You know what I'm saying? Like it just could have been so much more.
I get it. I completely get it. And especially get why it's on your mind right now with the loss of Shad and everything.
Yeah. It just, there was a way to set them both up to just be so much bigger than they ever were together, and it just kind of didn't happen. And I remember watching it. It was a big deal for me.
Me too. I really enjoyed Crime Time. I don't remember the breakup, but I enjoyed Crime Time, and I loved Shad. Shad was my favorite of the two by far.
But see, that's the thing. Like I think the fact that you and Oscar couldn't remember it tells us everything we need to know. No shade to either of you.
No.
But the fact that you couldn't call it to mind shows us how badly it was handled. It should have been done so much better. You should remember it. You could have, but WWE won't let you.
You're right. I remember I went back when Shad passed away not that long ago. I went back and watched all their promos. They were great backstage. They were great whatever they worked with. They had great chemistry. And it is a shame that we don't remember like this feud that could have been great. That they could have made so much of it, and it could have 2 great personalities, and it was just it just flew over everybody's head. One
of my favorite promos of all times. It's in the top 3, and it's one of my favorites so much that I set up my favorite promos one night to show Stacy because I wanted him to see, when we first got. And for me, one of my favorite promos is outside of the arena when DX had been kicked out and they were looking for tickets to get in there. And they go to Crime Time to buy these tickets, and they're Crime Time's talking, and Triple H and Shawn are like, and Shawn pulls the best line from the movie Airplane, "I speak jive." And he talked to them. and then right at the end, Triple H, they're leaving, and Triple H comes back and goes, "For shizzle."
I remember that.
I remember that.
The floor laughing to the point I gotta go watch it after we're done taping because it's one of my.
Send me the link if it's on YouTube.
I'll send it.
It is. It's on YouTube. I've seen it there. It's definitely
so funny. And that was just the epitome of how great Crime Time was together. They could work with anybody.
Yeah, they could.
Before we sign off, I want to talk about one more tag team that right now, or shall we say, we have been waiting for them to break up for how many years now, and we keep getting it sucked, dragged out. And that is Bailey and Sasha.
What?
Can we please have them finally break up? We're talking about the most epic breakups.
I mean,
This is
I
a
don't,
breakup that never happens.
I don't mind it.
The breakup or the tag team?
This is the breakup that never seems to happen because they've been together so long, back and forth, since NXT. And
You know
yet,
you know what the problem with you kids is? The problem with you
You
kids,
kids?
you newfangled viewers of television, that you children, you kill me. There's such a thing called dragging feuds out and baking heat. I think that's what Kevin Sullivan used to call it. Let it cook. It doesn't matter. Like, to me anyway, I'm not bothered by the fact that they've been together this long and that they keep teasing it and then they pull it back. That doesn't bother me. I actually think it's kind of fun because they haven't done anything like this in forever, because people have no attention spans.
right.
He keeps rushing things like crazy, and they're finally dragging out to something that's actually kind of reasonable the way they used to do it back in the 80s.
Right.
And
But
now people are having a problem with it. Like, but it's okay. Like, this is
I love slow
life.
burns.
Life does this.
Slow
Life
burns
goes
are
in and it
fine.
pulls back and it goes in and that's what life does.
I
This
get
is
that.
a Bailey
but
burn.
I so want to see them beat the heck out of each other. I'm so over.
But think
The
of how much
force-
more. Think of how much more you're gonna want it when it finally happens. How
And
happy
it's-
you will be when
But
it.
you
it's
got to
coming.
realize.
It's coming.
Yes, but you got to realize, going right back there, and I keep saying this, that Vince wanted to do it in Sasha's hometown at SummerSlam, and I was supposed to be there.
No, I
So
know. I remember.
that's why I'm having so much issue with this not coming to fruition. It's not the slow burn. It's that I'm angsty over COVID, okay?
I just think it's going to be so great because it's going to happen.
It's gonna happen.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Sasha keeps dropping little hints here and there, and then she pulls it back, and then she goes back in, and they pull it back, which is just like life. So when it
Yeah.
finally happens, what no one is going to say, absolutely no one, is, I'm bored, it's too late. No one's going to say that. You know you're not going to say it. What you're going to do is, oh, finally. That's what you're going to do. Everybody's going to do it. You can complain all you want, but that's what you'll do.
Well, we
And
thought it was going to
Sasha's
happen.
the one that's going to blow. That's what I want to see. I want to see Sasha just blow.
Yeah, she
and
will.
Bailey get it. Oh, that would be
Hope so.
so
The,
epic.
the stage
Look
is
at
set.
Bailey have.
Bailey goes back to hugging again.
Sasha's got so much that she could
The
have
floor.
all the feelings over.
She can hug the
Sasha
floor.
can handle turning on
Yeah,
Bailey than
Bailey.
Bailey could turning on Sasha,
Yep.
Yeah.
personally.
Maybe they shock us and it's the other way.
Exactly. They're doing that with Bliss and Cross right now.
Well, they did. I mean, they already had Bailey turn once. Remember when she came out and sliced the wacky waving inflatable Bailey buddies? I said it.
Yes.
I missed that.
But it was on the buddies and it was on the world. It wasn't on her bestie, Sasha.
But it was delicious. It was so
Yes.
good. She can do it. I know. I can't stop saying it. She can do it.
Okay, so is it going to happen before the end of the year?
I think they wait until we have I don't know how long it's gonna take. They wait till there's crowd back in the arena and then they
I
do
want
it.
a crowd for that.
Yes, same
Yeah.
thing. I think they wait for a crowd.
I will
I
agree
It
with that.
would be
I want a crowd for
to
that.
quote Botch, it would be delicious either way.
I want a crowd for that so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree that a crowd and not a digital crowd, live in person.
Yeah, not
Crowd.
the Blunder Dome, but we want a crowd.
They're dumb.
Like,
Glad you said it. I've been thinking it.
I know, but I mean, but like, just the table is already set. Sasha is Sasha no belts. She has nothing, and all she can
Yes.
do is stare in envy at Bailey's title. It's gonna happen. The stage is already set. We just need to be patient and let it play out. Let Sasha be subtle for a little while longer, and give us a little more and then pull it back and give us more and then pull it back. It's going so well. I don't care how long that goes. Truly.
I understand. It's because of the whole SummerSlam in Boston thing that I'm so angsty over it. Because I was expecting to see it happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
No, I got you.
So I think we're gonna wrap up our epic tag team explosions episode.
Do we want to talk about Miz and Mizdow?
No, I'm still hurt that he's gone from the WWE. I am still broken over this.
But that's why you should talk about it, because you're mad at it. That's why you should talk about it.
Go right ahead, Botch. Tell us about the breakup.
So the two of them were set to be just incredible together, and it looked like the breakup was going to create another star.
Right.
I mean, Damien Mizdow, whatever his name was at that point, was set to be just, I mean, they give him this incredibly stupid stunt double gimmick. It was so stupid.
Oh, it was horrible.
You would look at that on paper and be like, are you high? Like, this is a good idea on no one's watch. This is like some sub Vince Russo garbage.
Yes.
But because of how talented Aaron is, yes, I'm being Marcus, because of how talented Aaron Stevens is, he was able to pull it off and make it look like something. I was on the floor every single week watching him mimic the damage that Miz's opponent would take. It was hilarious. It was just inspired. It doesn't work if he's not the one doing it, but they had the stage set to create this huge star, and then nothing. The breakup happened. They just killed it. It just died. And I don't even know why.
And they, he's one of the Money in the Bank winners who went nowhere.
They gave like the revenge match away on TV.
I know, the whole thing. They dropped the ball on Aaron Stevens, who is still considered, for me, one of my all-time favorites because he is just so talented.
He was one of the few bright spots on NWA Power when I was watching. He was fun to watch.
Yeah.
I know you didn't see it, but he was literally fun. He was the reason to watch.
He's the reason to watch anything he is on.
He wasn't, I'll be honest with you, he wasn't good in TNA. That didn't work at all. That was a disaster. No. But like this whole sub Liberace thing with like the flesh-colored tights, and it was weird. It didn't work. It was just a bad idea. I guess he was just trying things. I don't know. But if you've seen him in NWA Power and you see him doing like the Mongrovian karate thing with the question, it's like a fever dream. But you have to watch it because it's really funny. You would die laughing at it, Queen. It's so you.
I will go back and watch them then, because for him, I will watch Paint Dry for Aaron Stevens. And the thing is, we're a previous episode of this, another episode of this show that we taped, we were discussing women who should go to AEW. Aaron Stevens needs to go to AEW to make my life full.
Please.
I'm going on a Twitter campaign. Anyway, I think now is the time to round it off so I can go start my Twitter campaign for Aaron Stevens because he is amazing.
Agreed.
So, as per usual, we had Count Oscar, Noble Natalie, Baron Botch. I'm Queen KB. And now for all the technical mumble jumbo down below, make sure you that thumbs up and that subscribe and the bell. That bell. Click that bell and you'll know when the next episode appears. And on that note, we'll see you next time for Wrestle Royalty. Bye!